Special Agents, welcome to Agent Training Week 5. Let's review what we've learned so far. We have learned that as Christians, we need to unselfish service. We need to have unselfish service. That means put others' needs before our own and serve them. We have learned that making peace is important. We have learned that we need to be honest. And we have learned to trust God when we are afraid. This week, I've got a fun story for you. I love all these stories, but this is a good one. Are you ready? I want you to pay attention and see, what can you learn? How does God want you to live according to this story? So this story happens in the time of the judges. Remember that cycle of apostasy where they worshipped an idol and then they were enslaved by another people and then they said, God help us, and he sent a judge and freed them, and yay, they praised God for a little bit, and then they did it all over again and over again and over again. Well, it happened during that time. And there was a man, and he had a wife and 2 sons. And they left Israel and they went to a land called Moab. It's a nearby place. And they went there and they lived there, and he died, which was really sad. It happens. But his sons, they both married. They both married Moabite women. And then something happened and both of them died. Now, the laws in Israel were that if a man died, his kids would take care of his wife, or if a person's husband died, another brother would take care of them. There were laws that God set up to make sure they were taken care of. Well, now here's Naomi, this woman, and her husband and both her sons are dead. There's nobody to take care of her and her 2 daughter-in-laws, her sons' wives. So she says, you guys go back to your family. I'm going to go back to Israel. And one of the daughter-in-laws said, okay, I'll go back to my family. I'll miss you. And the other one, her name was Ruth, she said, no, I'm going to go with you. Let your people be my people. Let your God be my God. I'm going with you. So the 2 of them, Naomi and Ruth, went back to Israel, back to where Naomi was from. And there was a man there who was very wealthy. His name was Boaz. And he owned a big field, lots of things. He owned a big field. And his workers would go out in the field. And there were laws so that if there were people who didn't have food, they could go into the fields when the workers were harvesting the grain. And any that got dropped or left on the sides, they could collect. And so she would go out every day out to Boaz's fields, and she would collect grain so that her and Naomi had food to eat. And Boaz noticed her and said, she's a hard worker. And he said to his workers, when you see her out there working, leave a little bit extra for her. Make sure that she's taken care of. And Naomi noticed, Ruth comes home with a lot of extra food. And she knew that those laws about having another family member take care of someone who'd lost their husband, she knew about those. And she said, Boaz is a family member. We don't know exactly. He's probably a cousin of some sort. So she says to Ruth, this is what we're going to do. She had Ruth go at night. And now remember, we talked last week about Gideon threshing and, getting the grain and getting the bad stuff that we don't eat blown away and the good stuff that we eat left. Well, Boaz had been threshing, and he fell asleep on his grain. And because he was guarding it, he had to, protect it. So that's a good place to sleep. Make sure nobody sneaks in and steals any, because it'll wake him up. So Naomi had Ruth go, and I don't understand what this means. It's kind of one of those weird things, but it worked. She uncovered his feet, and she laid down at his feet. And he woke up and he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I want you to be my kinsman redeemer, my person who takes care of me because my husband is dead. And Boaz, he sent her home, and he went to the town leaders and made sure everything was okay. And then he came back and he married Ruth, and he took care of her. And this is one of the parts of the story that I absolutely love. They had a son. So Naomi, who lost her husband and both her sons, now has a grandson, and they named him Obed. And so Naomi is thrilled because she now has a grandson, and she has a son-in-law to take care of her, and Ruth is being taken care of, and God has provided for them. God took care of them. So this is the really cool part of the story. Obed grows up, and he has a son named Jesse. And Jesse grows up, and he has a son. And can you guess his name? His name was King David. Ruth is the great-grandmother of King David, who is the great-grandfather of Jesus. So that means Ruth is the great, lots of greats, grandmother of Jesus. How awesome is that? Okay, now what did we learn from that story? How does God want us to live according to that story? Let's take a look in our envelope and see. Okay, here's our envelope. And inside is a yellow piece of paper. It's a blank yellow piece of paper. However, this is off a pad of paper. I know it's one of those, they're called legal pads, where you got a whole pad of paper and you can just, use one sheet at a time. So I have an idea how we can see our message off this pad of paper. Let's take a look. Okay, here's our pad of paper, and I have got a crayon, just a plain black crayon. Now I'm guessing somebody wrote a message to us on the piece of paper that was on top of this one. And we're gonna see if we can figure out what that message was. So we're gonna just lightly color with our piece of paper and see if a message shows up. I see something, it's really hard to see. Okay, it's really hard to see, but I can see it in there. Oh, I wish you were here in person, because then you'd really be able to see it really well. But if you look, I can see right here it says, I'll trace the lines. It says, God is God is with me. God is with me is our message. Our secret mission for today is to remember that God is with us. God was with Naomi and Ruth even in Moab when their husbands died. God was with them when Ruth went out into the field to gather food. And God was with them when she went to Boaz and said, hey, be my kinsman redeemer. Be that person who takes care of us. God was with them when he gave them a baby, Obed. God was with them. And we get to remember that. We get to remember that when things are hard, imagine how hard it was for Naomi and Ruth to lose their husbands. Imagine how hard it was for Ruth to leave everything she'd ever known, her family and her culture, and go to a new place. Imagine how it might have been really hard to go out into the fields and work, or maybe she was really nervous and a little embarrassed going to Boaz and asking him that question. And it was hard, but they trusted God because God was with them. And that's our lesson. This week, while you think and while you pay attention and notice that things are hard, because things are hard right now. We can't come to church and have normal Sunday school. We didn't get to go and finish the school year. We don't get to have VBS and our regular summer activities. Things are hard, but we need to remember that God is with us. So when things get hard, he's with us. And that's my challenge for you this week, is hold on to that. Remember that God is with us. I'll see you next week.